No, they left voluntarily in the middle of a war. Regardless, they lost their land, they lost their homes, they lost their property, and they have been living on the outskirts of Israel and Palestine in refugee camps in Syria, refugee camps in Jordan, in Lebanon, some in Egypt, for 40 years. 40 years waiting to go back home. But of course there is no home for them anymore. Their lands have all been seized by Israelis. Their homes now have Jews living in them. They don't have their fields anymore. They don't have their businesses anymore. Somehow these people have to be compensated. Now, what the Palestinians want is for them to be able to come back. But of course, we know that that's impossible. I mean, at the time, 40 years ago, they were barely 1 million people. 40 years later, they're now more than 5 million people. You can't just have 5 million people all of a sudden come back. It would completely destroy the infrastructure of the system. But what the Palestinians say is, okay, well then there has to be some sort of compensation. They have to be paid. They have to be paid for the land that they lost, for the homes that they lost. These 4 issues, 2 states living side by side, Jerusalem being split between them, West Jerusalem becomes the capital of Israel, East Jerusalem becomes the capital of Palestine, that Israel withdraws back to its 1967 borders. And let me just say one thing about this, by the way. Israel sometimes says, well, that's fine and everything, it's just that for 40 years we've been in this occupied land. We can't just uproot. We have millions of people living in the West Bank. We can't just uproot them. In some cases that's true. So what the Palestinians have said is, okay then, you withdraw mostly to the 67 borders, and in those areas where you can't withdraw, we'll swap some land. You can keep that part, but you give us some land someplace else. So even this situation has been dealt with. And then the right of return, which is a sticky one. I mean, Palestinians, they get really, really passionate about this. It's a sticky one. They feel like, look, these people lost their homes. They were forced out of their land. They deserve to come back. But they also recognize that that's really not going to happen. So this compromise to this solution, this intractable problem. What do we do about this Israeli-Palestinian conflict that's been going on since 1948? What do we do about it? Well, the truth is that everybody knows.